So who needs to be involved with an IT security risk assessment? Now, in many organizations that we work with, there's a perception and actually a misperception related to this question. The misperception is that this function is solely the responsibility of the information security officer. Well, yes, this is a key function and responsibility of this person, but the reality is that this project is a responsibility of the entire organization. The entire organization should be involved with it. And as you can see on this slide, it ranges from the very top of the organization at the board level and executive management all the way down to the business and the process owners, and even to a lesser extent, human resources, compliance, and audit. Now, I know this next slide is busy and very hard to read. So before you start squinting and sending messages that you can't read the details, we understand. The chart was only provided for illustration purposes. And actually, what we've done is we've also provided you a link at the bottom of the slide so that you can access the slide and the framework behind that slide at your own convenience later on. Now, this chart has been borrowed from the ISACA Risk IT Framework, and that's actually a new framework. Although the framework was created for performing a more broad IT risk assessment, it's still applicable for performing a security risk assessment, considering security is a component of a general IT risk assessment. So it's been added to articulate the broadness and the comprehensiveness of an organizational involvement with the security risk assessment. Now, this chart also identifies the functions that are primarily responsible for various activities. And as you can see, those are highlighted in the red boxes, while the green boxes represent involvement by the functions for a particular activity. Now, one other note about some of the charts and the diagrams we have included in this presentation. These items have been included to provide a level of credibility in the presentation. Now, this material is not made up by Transcendent Group, but instead, the basis behind performing an IT security risk assessment stems from research from various organizations, which are included in corresponding frameworks and best practices that are well recognized and accepted both domestically and abroad. Our approach is built on these foundations.
Thank you, Richard. So now we know why to perform a security risk assessment and who should be involved. So let's look into how to perform an IT security risk assessment. First, we need to define the scope of the IT security risk assessment. And there are 4 areas to consider. It's the content scope, the organizational scope, the types of security risk assessments, and also the frequency has an impact on the scope. So let's talk about the content scope first. It is very important that the IT security utilize the broad definition of IT security and not only confidentiality. Therefore, make sure that you identify it as your data integrity risk, meaning information is accurate at all times, availability risk, meaning information is available when needed for the different business functions, and finally, confidentiality risk. Access is restricted on a business need-only basis. What we see many times is that the IT security risk assessment mainly is focused on confidentiality, and therefore you may miss critical risk areas such as change management, which has a huge impact on data integrity and availability as well. Let's talk a little about the organizational scope. So the question, are we performing an enterprise-wide IT security risk assessment, or are we performing one for a specific system or project? In general, we recommend that the organization perform an enterprise-wide security risk assessment, and then you perform one for each key system. In addition, the organization should perform an IT security risk assessment when major changes occur, as well as for a major project. The other important aspect from a scope standpoint is what type of IT security risk assessment. Are we only performing an IT security risk assessment to meet regulatory requirements? So, for example, the HIPAA requirements, which mainly address EPHI, electronic protected health information, or it's more to address the organization's IT security risk areas as a whole, which include all areas within the organization, like payroll, strategic plans, etc., etc. We recommend that you have a more comprehensive scope and include the whole organization's IT security risks. This is a more, I would say, more common practice. It's more efficient, and also reduce the risk that we miss some major security areas that is very critical for your organization. So finally, the next area to discuss related to scope is the frequency. And a key concept related to IT security is that this should be performed on a regular basis or when major changes occur. The whole idea is this is not a one-time event. IT security is a very critical part of your operation and should therefore be performed on a regular basis. So common practice, and as you know, regulatory requirements require you to perform this on a regular basis. And the key question, what is regular? And the answer is every organization is different, so there's no simple answer. I would say for hospital that the enterprise-wide security risk assessment should be performed or should be updated annually, and for each system every third year or when major changes occur. So now we define the scope. Let's look into the methodology, how actually to perform the risk assessment. The execution of an IT security risk assessment is relatively straightforward, as you see in this three-phased approach. First, you see on the far left side, the gross risk map. First, you need to identify your organization's IT security risks and evaluate the business impact. What's the significance and what's the likelihood of, for example, the risk for a disaster, a fire. Then we need to assess, here in the middle, what kind of control, identify the controls we have to mitigate the risks, and what's the quality of these mitigating controls. And based on this information, we will be able to create a net risk map showing the net exposure for the organization. And when we have the net risk map, we can sit down with management to understand the risk acceptance and discuss if we need to address some specific risks and which are the key risks that we need to test and manage on a regular basis. During the presentation, we will look into this in more detail. However, there's a key point with this three-step methodology going from gross to net risk map that I want to point out. The critical piece is that we want to identify not just the key risk, but we also want to identify the key controls. Doing this enables us, our risk management program, to verify, maintain the most important controls for the organizations.